So I know who you are.
Yes.
But to those who don't know who you are, please explain who you are and what you do.
I am Tom Ochoa. I am family man, first and foremost. That's who I am.
Nice.
What I do is I do a podcast, a fairly well-known podcast with Ben Foster. Everybody knows him. We do the Fozcast, and I'm like the number two, the right-hand man.
The brains behind
the
it.
other guy is what I'm known as. Yeah, so I'm Tom Ochoa, yeah.
There's nothing wrong with the other guy.
No, that's cool. That's cool. You can kind of blend into the background and be innocuous. He gets all the hassle and stuff.
I have given you fan mail this morning, to be fair.
Yeah, again, not for me. It's for Ben. So he has to do all the arduous signing of dozens and dozens and dozens of stuff, so that's fine.
So you touched on the success of the podcast and
Yes.
your YouTube channel as well. So what would be kind of your top tip for someone that's trying to get into the podcast industry or the YouTube industry? Like, what would be your top tip on how you've scaled?
Research. So probably a little bugbear of mine is I get multiple people every week saying, can you help me? Can you help me set up a channel? I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do that. And whilst it's good to ask for help, you've got to go and get it yourself. So when we set up the channel, people might have this misconception that me and Ben had this big team and there was a lot of budget. We didn't. I think we've grew this channel probably on a $5,000 budget, which was a couple of cameras, and that's about it. So we went out onto YouTube, onto Spotify, and just researched all the podcasts that we like, what we like about them, what we don't like about them, and from that you just kind of garner a picture of that's the direction we want to take it in. So that's how I would kind of say to kind of set it up is just do your homework and don't rely on other people.
No, I think that's fair enough. Is there any that you particularly like that isn't your own?
Yeah, there's loads. I've got to get the name right. The Price of Football, I really like. So it's like a football business finance podcast. That's my probably number one on my list, I'd say.
Okay. And then what would be the biggest risk you've taken now it's in your business, but any of them, because obviously you've got multiple different channels. So
Yes.
what would be overall the biggest risk that you've taken?
Two. So I'll give one business and one personal. So the personal one was probably jumping ship and leaving my previous career. So I worked in the alcohol industry. Ben and I set this up and it kind of blew up straight away. But the risk was to leave a 36 years old family, was to leave that and go, hey, let's go and do YouTube and make podcasts, because it's a little bit of a not real job, isn't it? Some might think. So there was a bit of a risk there. So I took the plunge, but you got to do it sometimes in life, haven't you? And then the other thing I would say is when Ben started putting the GoPro in the goal, playing football, if you know anything about like football, there's like rights holders and people pay billions and billions of pounds to basically show footage of match, Sky Sports for example. We didn't have that, and Ben put a camera in the back of the goal and we made videos and we didn't ask for permission. And this is where you've kind of got two sides of the business. So Ben was like, what's the worst that can happen? And I was saying, they'll sue us. Yeah, they'll sue us. That's pretty serious.
So the brains came in the operation.
Yeah, but sometimes you have to take a leap of faith, don't you? And it was one of those where we kind of say, let's seek forgiveness rather than permission. And the timing of it was very fortuitous in the fact that it was locked down. Fans weren't at the stadium, so they took quite a good view on it and said, do you know what, this is probably good for the game right now. And that enabled us to do what we did and sign a contract with them till the end of the season. So it worked out okay. It
was a risk willing, like it made its...
it was worth it, yeah.
Oh, that's fair enough then. But it sounds like brains out of the operation.
Do you know what? Ben's very creative. Very, very creative guy. But with that, and a lot of creative often doesn't come with detail. So whilst I've got my own creativity, I like to think that I'll underpin that with kind of making it happen, and then the devil is always in the detail. So I'd say I'm not saying that he's not the brains, but he's definitely not a details guy.
Got ya. So in terms of managing all these projects,
yes,
how do you find the time and energy, and how do you manage all these?
Challenging. It's the short and honest answer. And I think if anybody sits here and says, "Oh, you've just got to do this and that," I think they'd be lying. There are our workflow tools that sometimes we use, but when you get to a certain scale, they're very important. But we found that we did that, and actually it became a little bit of a hindrance because we've got a small team. We find that sometimes the best way of communicating is as simple as a WhatsApp group. But in terms of managing it, you've got to delegate as much as you can. In my opinion, you've got to trust the people that work with you, and that's something that I've had to learn because I wanted to have my fingers in every pie and oversee everything, and you're just not doing yourself justice and the people working with you justice either.
Yeah, and I think that's hard to do, delegating and trusting delegating.
Oh, massively. It's probably the hardest thing in my opinion.
100%. So that kind of leads into your kind of fun questions now.
Okay.
So for those who don't know, Tom is a member here at Mill Street, but we know Ben and Jamie quite well, who is on Tom's team.
Yes.
I want to know, who's your favourite?
Can I say neither?
Oh.
And say Luke, who is our videographer?
You can.
I'm going to circumnavigate that one, right? And say Luke. Jamie and Ben are very different characters to one another, and Ben is quite fanboying, and he'll walk into a room and it's high energy, and he's in, and he's Hurricane Foster, as I call him.
I love
and he'll
that.
be in, and he'll make a mess, and he'll cause a riot, and he'll throw information at everyone, and then he goes. And then the aftermath is, what's just happened there?
Yeah.
Jamie's a bit more consistent. He's steady. He's got a decent eye for detail, in an extreme way. So he'll kind of say, "What about this? What about that? What about that?" And I'll say, let's just kind of crack on with things, kind of thing. But they're very, very different. Yeah. And where Luke comes in is Luke is consistent.
So Luke's in between almost.
Luke is my consistent force that he doesn't get too high, he doesn't get too low. He's very kind of level-headed, and for me that is like perfect. He's not too emotional, so he just sits consistently and kind of ring him, and I know I can get very level-headed and measured response. So for someone like me, and the team that we've got with the different dynamics, Luke is like the guy.
Got you. Everyone needs a Luke.
Everyone needs a Luke.
So obviously you went to the Euros for a long time.
Too long.
Quite a long time. I know you were happy about it, but you were...
Yeah, it was a month.
You said it was a long time. I remember you going.
It's a month, and when you got a family, it's a long time to be away. But on the flip side, you have to look at it and say, God, people give their right arm to do this, what I do for a job. And it was fun, but I always do have it in my mind, it is a job.
Yeah.
So, and I think sometimes people, maybe from the outside looking in, don't always realise that.
That's fair enough. And so what was your favourite moment from the Euros?
Favourite moment from the Euros is, it'd be easy for me to say, it was the Holland game or this game or that game, but it probably wasn't. It was probably just the downtime when we had a bit with the guys. So Ben, Luke, Jamie, and then we have Watto, who's one of the hosts on one of our shows as well. And it was probably just those little moments, like the morning coffees, the barbecues out, and just those moments that you remember outside of the football. I would say it's the social stuff.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. And then what would you say is your most interesting or weirdest interview you've done? You've interviewed a lot of people.
Yeah, we've had a lot of people on now.
Very special guests.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. I would say, based on the one that I went away thinking about the most was probably, it feels like a bit of a name drop here, but
might drop it, go on.
Robbie Williams, I would say.
Okay.
He wasn't our normal type of guest because he's not massive in the football world, but evidently he watches the show and he asked us to come on. So we were like, yeah, well, he's not a footballer, but
it's Robbie Williams.
We can't say no. So he came down to Mill Street, didn't he? And I just found him fascinating. He's had an extraordinary career and an extraordinary life, and he said some things on camera, off camera, which were just quite thought-provoking. I went away and kind of thought about it for a day or two, and when you look at these people and they're famous and they've got the wealth, and you think that's nice, and actually some of the things he said, you kind of go, do you know what, living a normal life and a kind of under the radar type life, there's a lot to be said for that, because these people like the Beckhams and the Robbie Williams of the world, they can't walk to the pub with their dog for a pint.
Yeah.
They can't do that. They can't pop into Mill Street for a coffee because within 20 minutes, half a Leamington's going to be in here. So I'd probably say Robbie because he gave me an interesting perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's a cool guy as well.
Yeah, he's just a Stokey boy, isn't he?
He is.
I can say that. My family are all Stokies.
Yeah, he's proper
can tell
Stokey
that
boy.
accent.
Yeah, and he loves an espresso as well.
Oh.
Yeah, he was like mad into his coffee. So we kind of did a coffee run, and there was multiple espressos that came in. So
racked up
that's
that
his
bill.
fuel. Yeah.
So if you could play or watch, depending on what you want, one sport, only one, for the rest of your life, what would be your chosen one?
Well, for the rest of my life, I'm 40 now. I've got to be sensible, tactical about this. It's not going to be football, rugby, or anything like that.
But it's also you, Tom.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I would say.
Don't lie on this PODFAST.
I would say golf.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to say golf. I like riding my bike.
I thought you were going to say cycling.
How will I be able to do that as much as I do when I'm 60? I'm thinking the long game.
Okay.
Here. So I would say golf because it's very sociable, it's good exercise, it's fun, and then watching it on TV. Cycling can be a little bit dry to watch sometimes on TV, whereas golf is just, you can have it on in the background, you can focus on it. I'm going with golf.
Fair enough.
Cycling is close second.
Yeah. So I guess, ending the PODFAST, what is next for you? For the business, what's next on your agenda?
Oh,
that you can share.
More podcasting. We're just having a new set built at the moment. We are very much looking at the World Cup in Mexico, USA, and Canada in 2026. So we're putting the strategy behind that in place now. So that is kind of all consuming for me at the moment, and it's thinking about positioning the podcast in America. So we've got a decent American audience actually, and then when Ben signed for Wrexham, that kind of took a good upward curve, and it's trying to capitalise on that now. So it's trying to work with Wrexham, the Premier League, brand partners such as Nike, to just position us. So when that World Cup does come around in 2026, we're in a good spot.
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah.
It sounds like you're busy.
Very.
Well, thank you, Tom.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
PODFAST.
Thank you for having me.